loneliness, doubt, and an unexpected twist of love. This is not just a birthday story, but a journey into the heart of what it means to be remembered. Diem believed her husband Toan had forgotten her special day while away on a business trip, leaving her to face the silence alone. Yet behind that silence hid a carefully planned surprise, a secret carried by his sister Tui, and a gift that spoke louder than words. Stay with us, and don't forget to subscribe for more touching stories of love, sacrifice, and unforgettable moments. Let's begin. It was supposed to be a day of warmth and celebration, yet the house felt unusually quiet, almost heavy with silence. The soft ticking of the clock on the living room wall was the only sound accompanying Diem as she sat by the window, her hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of tea she had long forgotten to sip. Outside, the late afternoon sun was slowly sinking behind the rooftops, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. Normally, on her birthday, this hour would be filled with laughter, the fragrance of Toan's favorite flowers arranged carefully on the table, or the clatter of him rushing about the kitchen, trying to surprise her with a dinner he could barely cook. But this year was different. Toan was away on a business trip, and the distance between them was more than just miles on a map. It was an aching void that pressed against her heart. Diem had spent the morning trying to stay busy. She scrolled absent-mindedly through messages from friends who wished her well, smiled politely at their cheerful words, yet found herself longing for just one message in particular. Toan had called the night before, but the conversation was brief, distracted. He had spoken about meetings, deadlines, and travel schedules, but not once had he mentioned her birthday. She told herself he must have been tired, too preoccupied to remember. But deep inside a small voice whispered a fear she tried to silence. What if he had truly forgotten? That thought stung more than she expected. Diem had always treasured little gestures. The way Toan remembered how she liked her coffee, the way he noticed when she wore a new dress, the way he whispered goodnight even on the busiest days. Forgetting her birthday would not be the end of the world, she reasoned, but it would be a crack in the delicate tapestry of their bond, a sign that perhaps work and distance were pulling him away more than she dared to admit. She wandered into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, only to be greeted by the stark sight of leftovers and half-empty containers. With a sigh, she pulled out a few vegetables and began chopping them mechanically, trying to assemble a simple meal for one. The sound of the knife against the cutting board echoed in the quiet kitchen, each thud reminding her of the absence of another set of footsteps, another voice filling the room. Diem tried to shake off the loneliness by humming a tune, but the melody faltered before it even began. When evening settled in, she lit a small candle on the dining table, not for celebration, but for comfort. She told herself it didn't matter, that she could enjoy her own company. Yet as she stared at the flickering flame, her heart betrayed her with its yearning. She imagined Toan laughing at her for being so sentimental, imagined his arms around her shoulders, imagined the familiar warmth of his presence. But the chair across from her remained empty, and the only reply to her thoughts was the hollow quiet of the room. For a moment, Diem felt foolish for hoping. Perhaps birthdays were just another day after all, she thought. Perhaps expecting flowers, gifts, or even a simple happy birthday from a man buried in his work was asking too much. The rational side of her urged patience, understanding. But the woman sitting in that dimly lit room, watching the shadows stretch across the walls, could not help but feel forgotten. The night stretched ahead, and she braced herself to face it alone. Just as Diem resigned herself to the thought of a lonely evening, the silence of the house was broken by a sudden knock at the door. At first, she thought she had imagined it. The sound was so soft, almost hesitant, as though the visitor were uncertain whether they should disturb her solitude. Her heart leapt unexpectedly. For the briefest moment, an irrational hope flashed through her mind. Could it be Toan? She shook her head almost immediately. That was impossible. He was hundreds of miles away, buried in business meetings and late-night negotiations. Still, the knock came again, firmer this time, and curiosity pulled her to her feet. She padded across the living room, her footsteps muffled by the carpet, the flickering candlelight casting her shadow against the walls. As she reached the door, a swirl of emotions rushed through her: anticipation, nervousness, even a trace of fear. She hesitated with her hand on the doorknob, gathering the courage to turn it. When the door finally creaked open, Diem froze in surprise. Standing there, with the kind of warm, familiar smile that instantly softened the edges of her loneliness, was Tui, Toan's older sister. "Happy birthday, Diem," Tui said gently, her voice carrying both affection and something secretive. In her arms, she held a large box wrapped in soft silver paper, tied with a ribbon so carefully arranged it was clear this was no last-minute gesture. Balanced atop the box was a small cake, its white frosting decorated with delicate flowers of cream, and 12 slender candles waiting to be lit. The faint aroma of vanilla drifted toward Diem, stirring something deep within her chest. For a moment, Diem couldn't find her voice. She stared at the unexpected visitor, her mind scrambling to make sense of the scene before her. "Tui, what are you doing here?" She finally managed, her words breaking into a half-laugh, half-sob. Tui's eyes glimmered with mischief, and she stepped inside as though she had rehearsed this moment. "I'm here on Toan's behalf," she said softly, setting the gifts down on the dining table. "He asked me to make sure you wouldn't spend your birthday alone. He told me, and I quote, 'Even if I can't be there in person, I want her to feel as though I never left.'" The words struck Diem like a rush of warmth after hours in the cold. Her lips parted, and tears pricked at the corners of her eyes before she could stop them. All day, she had convinced herself that Toan had forgotten her, that she had slipped to the bottom of his endless list of priorities. Yet here was proof, wrapped in ribbons and cake, that she had been wrong. He had remembered, not only remembered, but planned, cared, and entrusted someone he loved to carry out his surprise. Tui busied herself with lighting the candles, her movements brisk but tender, while Diem watched in stunned silence. The flames flickered to life, casting a golden glow over the room that only moments ago had felt so empty. Now, the atmosphere shifted entirely. What had been a hollow dining table transformed into a place of celebration. What had been loneliness now brimmed with an unexpected sense of belonging. "Make a wish," Tui urged with a grin. Stepping back to admire the candles, Diem closed her eyes, her hands trembling slightly as she clasped them together. Her wish was simple, whispered silently in her heart: "May this love always find its way back to me, no matter the distance." When she blew out the candles, the smoke curled upward like a secret message sent into the night, a promise carried beyond walls and cities to wherever Toan was at that very moment. And as the last wisp of smoke disappeared, Diem finally smiled, a real, unguarded smile. She had thought the day would end in silence, but instead, it had unfolded into something unexpected, something magical, a reminder that even when separated by miles, love had its own way of showing up at the door. When the last curl of smoke faded from the candles, Tui slid the beautifully wrapped box closer to Diem. "Go on," she urged, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "He wanted you to open this tonight. He said it's not just a gift, it's something he's been planning for weeks." Diem's fingers hovered above the ribbon, her heart pounding as though she were about to uncover a secret that had been waiting for her all along. The silver wrapping shimmered under the candlelight, and for a moment, she hesitated. She almost didn't want to open it. Part of her feared that nothing inside could match the storm of emotions rising in her chest. But curiosity and the unmistakable pull of Toan's thoughtfulness guided her hands. Slowly, carefully, she untied the ribbon and peeled back the paper, each rip of the wrapping echoing in the quiet room like a drumbeat. Inside lay a velvet box, small enough to cradle in both hands, yet heavy with significance. Diem drew in a shaky breath, lifting the lid with trembling fingers. The moment it opened, her eyes widened and filled with tears. Resting on the satin cushion was a delicate necklace, its silver chain gleaming softly, and at its center, a pendant shaped like a teardrop. But it wasn't the jewel itself that stole her breath, it was the engraving etched into the surface, subtle yet unmistakable. In Toan's familiar handwriting, 3 words curved along the pendant's edge, "Forever with you." Her lips quivered as she traced the words with her fingertip, the cool metal warming instantly against her skin. All day she had doubted him, doubted the place she held in his life, and here was her answer, not just in gold and silver but in the permanence of those words. The necklace wasn't merely jewelry, it was a promise, a reassurance sent across the miles. Tree watched her silently, her own smile softening into something almost maternal. "He called me this morning," she said quietly. "He sounded exhausted, but his first words were about you. He told me, please, make sure she knows she's never alone. This is the least I can do until I'm back." The weight of those words broke whatever composure Diem had left. A tear slipped down her cheek, followed by another, until she was crying openly, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief and joy of being remembered, cherished, and loved. She lifted the necklace, holding it up against the candlelight, watching it catch the glow like a star. Then, with careful hands, Tree stepped forward and clasped it around her neck. The pendant rested just above Diem's heart, its presence both grounding and electrifying. She touched it, feeling the way it seemed to belong there, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. A deep calm settled over her, replacing the loneliness that had haunted her since morning. The necklace was more than a gift, it was Toan's presence, distilled into something she could carry with her, a reminder that even across distances, his love was anchored to her. She looked at Twee through tear-bright eyes. "Thank you. For being here. For bringing this." Her voice was raw, heavy with emotion, but her smile was radiant. Twee reached out and squeezed her hand. "Don't thank me," she said softly. "Thank the man who loves you enough to make sure your birthday wasn't spent in silence." Diem nodded, pressing her palm against the pendant as if to hold the promise closer. She knew now that she hadn't been forgotten for even a second. Somewhere out there, Toan was thinking of her, loving her, planning for her. And though the chair across from her remained empty tonight, her heart no longer felt the absence. Instead, it brimmed with the certainty of love so steadfast that no distance could ever diminish it.